Yeah, I'm on my phone.
Don't worry about it then. Well, I guess, yeah, you can wait when you hear the intro start, you could just go on Rolling Out on their Facebook page, and then it should start sharing on their page. There you go, right now. And of course, can you let us know when it'll be sharing on the Rolling Out page so that way we can share it on our pages? And it's sharing now.
We're live, Key.
All right. So thank you guys for tuning in tonight. We just want to thank you for your time. And I want to give you a little background on what we're talking about tonight. So tonight we're going to have a city council member from Baltimore, Maryland, who's going to talk about some of the different ways that you can be impactful in the community. We're going to have a grassroots soldier who's going to talk about her, what got her into the movement, what she's done since she's been in the movement. And then we're going to have me and Josh Powell from the Lakers. And we're just going to talk about how do we see the community? What do we think needs to be changed in the community? What we've learned over the time that we worked in the community. And then we're going to all share so we can look at different opportunities to be able to impact our community in the best way possible. And I think that tonight is going to be a very powerful conversation because I got a couple of things I want to ask the guests that nobody's expecting. And I think it's going to give a lot of transparency and a lot of opportunity for us to have some conversations that we usually don't have in the Black community. So how you doing tonight, Josh? What's good with you?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Just staying the course, man. I know there's been a lot of things that have happened since we last talked last Tuesday, or the Tuesday before last, excuse me. But I'm good, man. I'm staying the course and continuing to make sure that I do my part. You know, that's one thing that I definitely talk about often. You know what I mean? Making sure we do our part. So just continuing to mash the gas with that and keeping the positive vibes going.
Yeah, and I feel you on what you're saying about doing our part, man. You know this, nobody else knows this watching. But Tuesday before last, the reason why we had to cancel the show is because I was hit by an 18-wheeler while I was on the way to meet with you so that we can do another program with VH1. I believe that was VH1, right? The show that
I think it is either VH1 or TV1.
And I apologize for us not having the show, the networks correctly, but that just goes to show how much work we are doing in the community. I got hit by a truck on the way to meet with everybody to do the show, and Josh had to leave and come pick me up because I had to go do the show. Like, regardless of what might happen to us as a person, we still got to represent for our communities because I walked away from the wreck, but somebody's father and somebody's son or daughter, they didn't walk away from police brutality. They didn't walk away from a court that sentenced them way more harshly than what they deserve. So even when we going through stuff, even when we have our challenges, we got to do what we got to do because our community needs us. So like Josh just said about staying the course, this last week been a difficult one on me. And I had to turn to my brother and be like, hey, King, how you keep your head up? What do you do when things seem like they becoming a little too much, too heavy? Like I almost got killed. You know what I'm saying? And I'm trying to process all of this. So I got to ask my brother, like, hey, man, I need an encouraging word. And that's why it's so important to have strong people who you fight alongside with. Because when we get to that space, we got to be able to turn to somebody, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. So tonight I want to bring in our guests. And the reason why I want to bring everybody in early now is because I want us to have enough time to really be able to have an in-depth conversation. So I want to introduce our first guest, which is going to be Jasmine Key. Okay.
Hello, everyone. Yes, I'm here. Hi.
Hey, how you doing? Thank you for coming in and joining us. Jasmine, I want to give a little background on who you are, what you do, and your involvement in the movement. So if you like to, do you want to tell people briefly, like, you know, what got you into this? What do you do?
Before George Floyd, I was an esthetician. Now I'm a community organizer, activist. Right now, me and my coalition are working with Movement for Black Lives. We're running a defund campaign where we're out here doing grassroots organizing, where we're out here and we're knocking on doors and we're out here and we're talking to communities. So that's a little bit about myself.
All right, Jasmine, she's being humble. When I say y'all, this young lady is a fighter and a worker. She's at every protest. She's educating the community every way she can. And I mean, like literally putting in uncountable hours. So I really appreciate everything you're doing. I appreciate the fact that you're doing it from the streets, you know, directly in the streets. Because a lot of times, you're welcome. A lot of times it's easier to do it from an office and not to discount the people who are making the programs and people who are doing that from behind the scenes. But it's another thing when you got to be out there in the heat, when you got to be out there, you know, when it's raining, you got to be out there when people aren't even giving you the type of energy you expected to receive from your community. So I really appreciate you doing it. I want to bring on our next guest, Leon. Let me see how to click in, brother. Hey, Leon, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, Keith. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Are you in now?
Yeah, man.
All right, I want to give a little background on who you are also and your long history in community organizing, community work, and what brought you into being a public servant. Do you mind telling everybody a little bit about yourself?
Not at all, but first of all, I want to say it's good seeing you.
It's good
because
seeing you too.
I mean, you just heard about, you know, the accident, and so just thank God that you're okay, that you're still with us. And like you were saying before, I think that's part of the reason so many movements fails, because we think that it's all on the shoulders of just one person. And so we've got to know that we're in this struggle together, and it's not going to come, you know, through the efforts of just one, but it's going to come from a unified effort, all of us working together. So when one can't do it, you know, somebody else has got to pick them up and pick up the slack. And so I'm thank God that you got a brother and Josh to help, you know, pick up that slack. But so I'm up in Baltimore. I'm currently a councilman on the Baltimore City Council for the past 4 years, but actually been serving local government really now for about 20 years, just really and trying to bring about economic empowerment to our community, working primarily in areas where that have been disenfranchised, disinvested. I represent the community that I guess is known internationally for the unrest that happened in Baltimore in 2015 around the death of Freddie Gray. And so the issues that precipitated a lot of what happened in 2015 didn't just start in 2015. They were generations of neglect and disenfranchisement that led to that. And quite frankly, despite even my efforts and the efforts of others, little has changed since 2015. And you know, we can't keep going from generation to generation, year to year, decade to decade, just kicking the can down the road and not changing the issues. And that's why the time that we're facing now it's a critical moment for us to really address these structural issues that have been plaguing our community for years now. So thank you for having me on, Keith.
Oh, thank you so much. All right, guys, I want to start off with a recording. And what this is Joe Biden in 1993. And this is the speech he gave when he was pushing for the crime bill to be voted through, okay? So I want you guys to hear this. And the reason why I want y'all to hear this is because I want us to really hit on the importance of getting involved in politics, getting involved in social justice, getting involved from the grassroots all the way to the capital of your state, to your city hall, to your city council, to your mayor's office, to make sure that we're enforcing policy, that we're holding people accountable, and that we're looking at things that, you know, can really impact generations of our community. So I just want to play this, and I want to let people hear some of the things that were said in 1993, okay? Let me know if you can hear this.
It doesn't matter whether or not the person that is accosting your son or daughter, or my son or daughter,
you guys hear that?
my wife, your husband, my mother, your parents. It doesn't matter whether or not they were deprived as a youth. It doesn't matter whether or not they had no background that enabled them to become socialized into the fabric of society. It doesn't matter whether or not they're the victims of society. The end result is they're about to knock my mother on the head with a lead pipe, shoot my sister, beat up my wife, take on my sons. So I want to ask, what made them do this? They must be taken off the street. That's number one. There's a consensus on that. Unless we do something about that cadre of young people, tens of thousands of them, many of those people, beyond the pale. And it's a sad commentary on society. We have no choice but to take them out of society.
Okay, there's only one more part I want you guys to hear.
The truth is, we don't very well know how to rehabilitate them at that point. That's the sad truth. I'm the guy that said.
Okay, so could you guys hear that well enough to get a overview of what he was saying?
Damn. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So if you listen, what he was talking about was that it doesn't matter what background a person comes from. It doesn't matter what disadvantages they were born into. It doesn't matter what lack of opportunity and inequities they face. It doesn't matter how they got to a point of where they're doing criminal acts. All that matters is that we remove them off the streets, right? And then at the end of it, he says that the truth is that reform work doesn't work well. That when we spend our time and our energy and our efforts on trying to help people reform or making sure that people have different options other than just going to jail or prison, that doesn't work well. So I wanted us to just talk about how does that make you feel as a person who dedicated your life to trying to erase these inequalities, a person who's working to try to make opportunities for everybody. So the things that he said doesn't matter will matter. Like if you come from a community that has less opportunity, that has inequities in the school systems, that has food deserts, that has all these different situations that most of the communities we represent have, that those things are taken into account, and we can do something to kind of even it out so that those children grow up not to be criminals, but to be adults who can be productive members of their society.
Well, if y'all don't mind, I would like to start first. I think for myself, just from doing my day-to-day, whether it's in the community, whether it's at home, whether it's, with children, whether it's with young adults or even adults, I think that people operate a lot different when they feel the consistency, when they feel the genuineness, and when they feel that you really care and that you're doing what you can to really pour into them. Now, that doesn't mean that everybody's going to march to a different beat, but I think that you'll get more than none when you're doing the things necessary to help them build and to put them in a place where they can succeed the most, and that's starting from helping them mentally. That's starting from helping them emotionally. That's starting from, some aspects with the spiritual work and just helping people understand their importance and how valued they are. There's value in that, you know what I mean? And that goes across the board. And it's like when I've, done a lot of things in the community and even working with different organizations, partnering, or even doing my own stuff and just showing up the way that I have. And it's just, you see a change and a shift in these young men and women or young adults or, even in adults, you know what I mean, that want to be a part of something special. And I feel differently about what he's saying as far as in that clip.
So Jasmine,
Yes.
if you don't mind, I want to ask you, as somebody who has a family member who is serving a lengthy sentence,
Yes.
How does that make you feel? And do you mind sharing a little bit on that? I don't want to put you on the spot any more than you want to share.
He's serving life. The charge he has, I think they upped the charges that he had because of his arrest history. So I believe that the crime was of a lesser violence or nature than what he got charged. To hear him say that, I totally disagree. And it's like, I think I'm saying it right, from Malcolm, the Northern Wolf. It's very disappointing. We know that we have to get to the reason why is someone like that hitting your grandmother upside the head. You know, why are they robbing your grandmother? We have to get to that. And to hear him say that it doesn't matter. It does matter. It does matter. You can lock us all up all you want to, but if you don't fix the why, then you know what's the point. So yeah, it's very it's very disappointing to hear him say that. Yeah, especially hearing it come from me and having someone who's like you said, who's incarcerated. Yeah.
And the thing is that we don't really have a choice but to vote for the Biden ticket right now.
Exactly.
Like, we got to get Trump out of office. We got to come together and we got to collectively pull all our voting power together. So my fault. I want to hear your view also. I didn't mean to stop you from going.
My view?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think there were two things that jumped out at me, and I'm glad you brought up the point. Obviously, you know, this is the individual who, you know, might be, hopefully will be, you know, the next president of the United States. But I think that the first thing that jumped out at me was that, you know, taking that perspective makes it appear that there is either some inherent deficiency or immorality, you know, in an individual who, you know, finds themselves in, you know, that particular circumstance, and never acknowledging all of the factors that are surrounding that individual that may cause them to find them in that situation or to make certain decisions. And we can't continue to, and stand in that position doesn't mean that you don't promote safe communities or that you don't want people to make different choices, but you have to acknowledge the fact that people are making choices or being in an environment to make certain choices because of the other factors that are happening around them. And secondly, it becomes even more important because, you know, myself being an elected official, Mr. Biden being an elected official, stands in a position to control the resources that could change those factors. And if you don't think that reform, if you don't think that individuals can make different decisions if they're given different resources, then you will never provide them with the resources in order for them, their children, their families, their communities to change. And that's a dangerous position to be in, especially for someone who's controlling the resources.
Yeah. So the reason why I wanted to start off with that for our discussion tonight is because what we do a lot of times as social justice agents, as change agents, is we fight for the allocation of those resources. We fight to be the voice inside of those offices where those decisions are made. And we make sure that there's representation of all people, no matter what your background is, no matter what your situation is. We make sure that you are represented in the places where those decisions are going to be made that's going to impact your life, right? And you just said something that was very key, that if you don't believe that the change can be made, you're not going to put the resources in place for those changes to be made, right? So the reason why I wanted you and Jasmine to be able to speak this evening is because I wanted everybody to be able to see what kind of connection and relationship has to be built with somebody who's in the grassroots part of this movement versus somebody who's an elected official, so that we can come together and make change that actually reaches the community, right? A lot of times you have people that are doing great work in the community level, and you got people who are elected officials who care a lot. But when you don't have that connection, then you don't have a bridge to be able to get the resources to the people that need them, right? So I felt like it would be really a good opportunity for people to be able to sit back and see, how do you first determine what area of work can you do in your community? Second, how do you actually get started in that work? And then third, how do you connect with the people that can help you do the work on a greater level? So Jasmine, if you don't mind me asking, how did you get started in the work? Like, what was the first day for the first project like for you?
The first day of the first project was to just get out there and march. I just got out there, whatever they had to CNN. Like, this is fairly new for me, but even though it's fairly new for me, I've lived the injustice, so it's not new to me. But yeah, it was to get out there and march. Once I got out there and march, I networked. I tried to find people who were saying the same things that I was thinking, you know what I'm saying? Who, so we could organize. I knew that at some point we had to start organizing. So yeah, that's one thing. Just
You say
get
organizing.
out.
What do you mean by that?
Organizing. I guess when I say organizing is, yes, it's okay to just get out there and march, but you have to have demands. You know, you have to have a strategy to the things that you're doing. You have to research and all that. So that's a part of organizing. And then also like grassroots organizing, getting out there, talking to the community about whatever the issue, whatever your demand is. That's what I mean by organizing. So get out there, and it's probably best to try to find a good grassroots organization rather, in wherever you are, and get to work. They're gonna always have something for you to do. Oh, trust me, it's a lot out here that we all need to do. So that's one way I would tell someone to
Hey Josh, if you don't mind, can I follow up with you with the same question? What was day one like for you? First time you jumped out there and you decided, man, something got to change and I want to be a part of that. What did that look like for you?
I spent the first 3 weeks just collecting data. I was just paying attention to how people were moving and what was going on. So it was different for me because I stepped into a lot of different marches and organizations and just listening and seeing what they were doing, how they were doing it. I brought my kids to a couple. I know me and you were out a few times when it got a little crazy. You know, I just wanted to see first and foremost what people were thinking. I wanted to feel their emotions behind it. I wanted to understand if they understood why they're out here. You know, I wanted to see if there was a purpose. And again, that's what led me, which even from the beginning of getting up with Hannah and her group to promote positivity movement with what they were doing, that's why I kept coming back to them as time kept going on and on, because for one, they were consistent. And I mean, you still talking about a group who's still going to this day, in protesting and doing things the way that they're doing. They're very organized, very well structured. They have a plan in place and things that they want to do and how they go about it. And one of the most important things that I do feel is important, and you know, to go with what Jasmine was saying in a sense, is like from the educational standpoint. I think that's a big thing that's missing with people who are protesting, because, you know, I get it, people are angry, but then what? You know, I get it that, you know, we're upset or we're frustrated or we're tired, but then what? And I feel like where we miss it is because we're basing everything that we do off so much emotion and not really getting to the bottom of what we need to really do. And the educational part is the big thing of it, because a lot of people are protesting, but they don't even know why they're doing it. You know, they out there because somebody else is doing it, and that ain't gonna get you but so far. You know, you gotta have a real reason. Like, what is your why? I stepped out the next day, that night, because I'm a father and I refuse to have my kids go through something like that. You know what I mean? I refuse to. I don't want to be that parent that gets that call or something. Like, I just don't. You know, and I know, you know, my kids go through what they go through in the area that we live in. And that to me is more so why I do a lot of the things that I do. That's my why. So I feel like from an educational standpoint, the structure standpoint, the organizational standpoint was the reason why I was dealing with the Promote Positivity movement. But more importantly, just me understanding, because I wanted to see how people were feeling, why they were feeling the way that they felt, and then be able to go from there, because that's very important. I feel like a lot of things that we do are so emotion based that we have no plan. We act for a week, maybe 2 weeks, and then we let our foot off the gas, and that's where it goes bad. So,
Leon, before you go, I just want to throw out something. I just want to reiterate some of the stuff that I've heard them say, and also I want to make a point that Josh just touched on. So far, what I'm hearing you guys say is you needed to get out for yourself and be able to do a survey and see what's being done in your community, see how people feel in your community, and see what the community is saying. That's one thing. The second thing is you needed to find a group of people who were consistent. And you need to find a group of people that had structure. You needed to find a group of people who had things they want to see done, but they value your input in that, right?
Right.
And then the next thing that I heard also is that it needed to be people who had some type of goal that they wanted to see accomplished. Like, we want to see this changed, this addressed, and this made better. So it was really important to see those key things, right?
Right.
Now, something I wanted to back up on that Josh just said, when you were like, your kids go through what they go through in your community where you guys live, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're a professional NBA player who's won multiple championships, right?
Yes, sir.
A lot of people think that the situations and the, I guess you would say, inequities or the oppression or the just fear of your children getting hurt is something that only a certain class of Black people face. But you have to deal with that too. You have to worry about that for your children. So it's not just something that is just in impoverished communities or somewhere where people don't have the money to be able to afford an attorney. This could be any Black person in any community, and we all have to stand up because that could be your child, just like it could be the next person's child, or it could be you.
Right. And Leon, real quick before you go, I just want to give a brief example of what that looks like. I was at my son's baseball tournament, right? And I'm not going to put the team out there, the organization, or anything, but I had this gentleman throw up the white power sign to me, right? And because I do my research, right, and I understand, you know, what signs look like, I get all of that. But it's just one of those things where people will try you in every which way, shape, or form. Like, we're at a youth baseball game. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And on one side, you got 10, 11 you. On the other side, you got 17, I guess the high school team. So it was like, you know, 17, 18-year-olds or whatever, right? And, you know, a couple of their partners, I'm guessing they was college guys, maybe, you know, 19, 20, I don't know. But it's just unfortunate because you see the learned behavior, right? From passed down from probably the granddad to the dad to the son, however it works. And I know a lot of times people do stuff to either get a reaction or they don't really know what they're doing. They might know what they're doing. I don't know. But it's just a prime example of the world that we're living in and the times that we're living in, because people don't give a damn what's going on. I paid thousands of dollars to have my son participate on this doggone baseball team. I'm not thinking the least that I'm gonna be, and it is 9 a.m. and that's what we own. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't matter. Like, and then I have a decision because I have a responsibility. You know, how do I respond to that? Because I had to catch myself, and I said, okay, cool. Like, I gotta stay prayed up and do the right thing, because at the end of the day, I'm not gonna allow somebody or their energy to get the best of me or what I have going on. And the reason why I'm sharing that experience is because it ain't just something that's at the baseball game, right? It could be blatant in your face, or it could be something as small as all the kids are playing and then they won't let my son play. You see what I'm saying? Like, and they don't know what's going on, but they may not let my son play because of the color of his skin or whatever the case may be. So again, we're all experiencing this thing in some way, shape, or form. Yeah.
But Leon, I want to get back to you. I believe you're probably the most senior person out of all of us in this movement. Like, I've been doing this about. I'm saying that in a respect way. Like, I pay homage to you. But I've been doing this about 13 years, and I know you got me. So I would love to hear, how did you first get started? What caused you to take up your torch and go out there?
Yeah. Before I jump on that, can I just dovetail off of some stuff that Josh said? Is that, I mean, it's clear, and you know, you feel it more so as a parent, obviously, you know, when your children are experiencing certain things, but there is no, you know, no community, no Black person that's excluded from, you know, the ugly face of racism that we face, you know, not just in this country, but internationally. And as Josh was talking, it made me think. I had a conversation with my father earlier today, and he grew up on the Eastern Shore of Maryland. And oftentimes he would tell me about, you know, the struggles that they faced coming up. But one of the things that I think hit home with me the most about the stories that he would share is how at a young age, not only were they aware of their environment and the things that they had to face, but they were actually trained and prepared on how to face those situations. how to thrive in the midst of those situations. And sometimes I think we deprive our young people by not preparing them for the world that they're in. It doesn't mean that we jade you. It doesn't mean that we teach you hatred, but it does mean that we prepare you to be successful in the world that we're in. And part of that's just having a love for yourself, a love for your people, and a knowledge that the excellence is different for you, and that we always going to display that. And so, and I know that, you know, all of the panelists do that with all the young people in their lives, but I think it's an important part. But honestly, my entry, I think, was through the church. Honestly, I found, you know, my walk into a life of public service being about the individual man and trying to empower people and trying to help people realize the blessing inside of them. And it's an easy transition to, you know, when you're trying to elevate, you know, individuals to families, to communities. And I found myself transitioning from solely from the ministerial platform to stepping into, okay, how do we make government really work for us? And so I've been, like I said before, I've been working in different capacities in local government for 20 years. And I think some of my inspiration has been, you know, in certain communities, they don't need government to work for them. They got networks, they got institutional wealth, they got legacy wealth. In our community, we need government to work. Those are our resources, and they need to be active in our community. And so it's important that those individuals who we elect need to make certain that they understand that they are just stewards of those resources. Those resources don't belong to them. They belong to the communities. And sometimes they got to be reminded. And that's where the social activism piece comes in. It reminds people to take the high moral road. It reminds them to do what they have been charged to do. It reminds them that everybody should be treated equally, and that it reminds them that we've got to invest in the benefit and welfare of everyone. And so it's critical that we do what we do, because we're that mirror that our society should be looking into and say, no, you're gonna make a different decision about this.
Yeah, for me, when I look at how I got involved in this work, it really came from me finally understanding how much harm I was doing to my community. I came up in the streets. I started selling drugs at a young age. And when I first started selling drugs, I was just a kid that was trying to eat, right? And I went and escalated and got higher and higher in the streets. And then I got this really big charge, and I had time to really sit down and think. And when I was sitting down, I really thought about all the lives that we had impacted. For every dollar we made, there was at least one family that had some harm done to them, because you're keeping a parent high so they can't be there with their child. You putting drugs into a child's hand, they may get hurt, they may get locked up, and you just impacting your community in such a negative way. So when I got out and I got my freedom back, I decided that instead of being a person that hurt my community, I want to start to be a person that helped it. So I looked at what did we have to do so that we can give people who came from my kind of background other options, so criminality wouldn't be the first thing, right? So I went into the criminal justice system and I asked them if I put up the money for a reentry system, would they allow me to work with inmates who were about to get out of jail? I had been locked up about 50 times or so over the course of my life, and I still became a business owner. I still did all these things in my life, and I felt like if anybody was going to be able to give our people coming from a challenged background bridge or a pathway or guidance into how to, not have to be a criminal, but still be able to feed yourself and survive, I felt like I was a good person to do it, because I had to figure it all out on my own. So once I started working with guys and women who were coming out of a correctional facility, I started understanding more of what got us into that space, the inequities in the schools, the lack of support and wraparound services. And then I found myself advocating on more issues, because you see that there's not one thing that leads down to this junction. It's a whole different pathways and entries, and it's a whole lot of different things that need to be repaired if you want to erase every one problem. You may have 10 different issues that get to the same issue, get to the same outcome, right? Mm-hmm. So it went from me just working with people to me showing up at the state capitol and city hall and different places to speak on behalf of people, to say, hey, hold on, I'm one of those people too. Just because I wear a suit don't mean I didn't come from this background. Just because I own a business doesn't mean I didn't have the same challenges. You know what I'm saying? So I started not just using my hands to put in the work, but I started using my mouth to be able to advocate and protect people who were talked about in a negative light, right? Like when we listen to Mr. Biden and what he said, even though he is our best option and we got to vote for him, we got to understand in 1993, he didn't understand people that look like us. He didn't understand people who came from places we come from. He didn't understand people who had the challenges that we have. And maybe if there were more social activists who had the opportunity to speak on those type of platforms to people like himself, then maybe they could have gotten to him at that point and were like, well, Mr. Biden, you know, there's other options instead of just 85% of time being served. There's other options instead of just, you know, over policing certain communities. Like, you know, 70% of people almost who are incarcerated can't read and they struggle with literacy. And Mr. Biden, if we can help those people learn how to read, then they'll be able to be employable because they can be trainable. And then you don't have to say that, you know, they're going to be too far gone because they actually have more options now. So for me, the more I got into it, the more I noticed that my voice, my learned lived experiences, my background, all of my challenges, they were all tools to help me erase that challenge from another younger person or another person who was trapped in a place I had already been delivered from. So my first step was just going back to the same institutions that arrested me, the same places that I was incarcerated at or convicted at, and just saying, hey, look, how can I help? So that's how I got into this. So the next thing I want to ask now was, say Jasmine came to you. She's just started in this work, but she's super passionate. She's been in the community long enough to be able to hear some of the voices of people who don't really, people who are overlooked and, you know, a lot of times just not in the conversations, right? If she came to you, to city council meeting, and she said, hey, we're doing this in the community. We're trying to help the community understand some of the different ways that they can help their children to be able to get more resources. And we're trying to help curb criminality by putting in different activities for the kids to do while they're not in school. What would she have to do, and how would she have to present herself to be able to get a city council member like yourself to be able to first hear her, understand her, then help her?
Well, I think Jasmine said it earlier. The first step is to, you know, take a survey of what's already happening in the community, making certain that either that you're not replicating unnecessarily something that's already happening, when you could be adding to an effort that's already underway. And so I think can
you explain what you mean by that? I'm sorry.
Okay,
I mean, we know because we do the work, but if you could.
It would be like, sometimes it would be like putting a McDonald's on all four corners. It's like, why are you doing the same thing that your brother or sister is doing instead of adding to their effort so it's stronger, instead of creating your own thing? And so sometimes I don't think we understand that our biggest strength is our unity. So the first step is really making an assessment, okay, of what's going on, and with my energy, with my passion, with my resources, be better served supporting that effort as opposed to doing my own thing. And if nobody is doing that specific thing, then by all means step out and do that particular effort.
Can I put down an example for that? If you don't mind, can I just? So in other words, if they would focus on literacy for elementary school children, if you guys had another organization that already had resources and that was already working in that space, in other words, you would tell them, instead of us helping to fund your organization, we would like to help connect you with an organization that's already doing work in that area and see how you can bring resources to be able to reach more people in a greater way. Is that something like what you're saying?
Right. So that would be my first step, and that doesn't mean that that they necessarily have to have that type of partnership, but that would definitely be the first step to try to find sister organizations that are doing the work. And then also another thing that Jasmine said is talk about being organized. I heard someone say a quote that as it relates to even this recent social racial justice movement, that we're not outnumbered, we're just out organized. And oftentimes the effort is there, the numbers are there, the resources are there, but the organization isn't there. And so us as leaders, we owe it to those who we are serving to make certain that we are as organized as possible, that we've got proper structures in place, management in place, that we really know the trade, or we really know the principles behind our efforts. And then make certain that you partner. A lot of times, as a council person, you would not imagine how many things I get lobbied over. And sometimes we get more emails and calls and responses from stuff that I think is just so insignificant, and the things that are major, we don't even hear numbers of people about. And I think part of that is the lack of collaboration and partnership. And so even, I think partnership is critical if you got an effort, a major effort that you're trying to move. And so that activists like Jasmine don't feel like they're out there alone, but they're partnered with other organizations. And so they don't step, to you as a solo organization, they step as an umbrella or a group of organizations that are really working in that same space.
Okay, Jasmine, do you mind if you follow up? Because these are scenarios you've been in where you went to different people and you tried to get things done and you've reached some difficulty. So what have you seen in some of those challenges?
And Keith, can I just say one more thing, Keith?
Yes, sir.
And also make certain that you're asking that elected official, if it's so big, you're asking them to do something that they have the authority, resources, and power to do.
So research the person you're speaking with also.
There are different levels of government that have different authority and different resources. Every elected official is not the same. Find out, which elected official was passionate about the same issue that you're passionate about. It makes the connection easy. You got a fighter, on your behalf. If you found somebody who thinks education is a critical, or literacy is a critical issue as well. And so you got to also study, study the elected officials as well.
Okay.
You do. And what was the question again, Keith?
I just wanted you to be able to point out some of the barriers you've faced and some of the different things that you run into when you're trying to do these exact things we're talking about.
I'll talk to an elected official. It would be some of the roadblocks is number one, like you said, having a coalition of people saying the same thing. You'll go to, let's say, the Veto 838. There were, I don't know how many organizations doing, I don't know how many rallies and protests for it. When they could all just come together, and I think that would bring more light to the elected officials, attention. Some roadblocks, I have had some, like he said, every elected official is different. I've connected with some and they promised that they're going to give us meetings in July. July has gone and passed and there's no meeting. So yeah, those are the roadblocks, but I will say, I will piggyback on what he said. I had to learn to seek out the elected officials that feel the same way about my concerns as I do. That way I know that that's an ally, that's someone that I can have that's going to fight for me. So that's one thing I did have to learn out there, trying to connect with elected officials. Yeah.
All right, Josh, do you got anything you want to add to that? Is there anything you could think of that you would like to ask, or something that you face that you would like to just know what's a better route of getting that done when you do have to work with one of your elected officials?
I think that, for one, before you can even go to them, you got to have a united front. And I think that was the biggest thing that I definitely saw, because you had different groups on different stuff. You had peaceful, you had violent, you had some marching, you had some that was standing in one spot, left one protest group to go with another. It was just all over the place. And yeah, I get it, man. I want to say that I salute everybody. Like, they're coming out, you know what I mean? And I feel that their heart is in the right place, but man, I think that is the huge difference between the things that got done, by the OGs from way back. They just seemed to be together. Like, it didn't matter what was going on. They was like, yo, we're meeting here at this time, at this spot. But then what's interesting is, obviously I can only speak for Atlanta. Man, I'm looking at some of the other places across the world, they getting 1 million people to come together. Mm-hmm. And they shutting down the whole city. Like, and I'm just like, what is going on? Like, why can't we do that? And these people, from my understanding, I haven't seen anything pop up in their countries as far as like what we're dealing with to that magnitude. but they're able to come together and get it right, you know, and I think that we've had some places here. I think LA did it. I think Houston did it. I mean, we've had cities that have been able to pull it off where they've gotten at least 100,000 people on deck, and then they're moving throughout the city and making, you know, a huge impact. But then even after you do it one time, now the next challenge is to do it the next day.
I was just thinking that in my head. It's got to be consistent.
And then the next day. And that's why I feel we fail, because it's like we get the one day, we put it up on the ground, people are like, oh man, we proud, and then that's it. And then and then all of a sudden we got another, you know, injustice or another this or another that. And to be real with you, everything that, you know, thank God for social media, at least from that standpoint, because it's like people are now like putting stuff up, but it's like, it seems like it's only getting worse. I mean, shoot, here in Georgia, I know we just had the situation, you know, where the cops shot at or laid down, you know, some kids. And I mean, it's just a bunch of stuff going on, you know what I mean? And it's just unfortunate that we can't come together and we can't do it consistently.
So I want to jump in on what you just said, Judge. It's a couple of things I think about, right? First and foremost, there's a policy in place for just about every injustice that we face, right? And that's how the injustices become systematic. If we don't know the policy that is in place, then we don't really even know what we're attacking, right? Like a lot of people are attacking police officers being indicted for shootings, but they don't know about qualified immunity, right? Qualified immunity is on a federal level. If we can't get qualified immunity to be removed, then we don't even really have the power to do some of the things we're asking for our district attorneys and our mayors to do, right? And we don't understand the power of the police union. So if we don't get some policies put in place that take away a little bit of that power from the police union, then when you say that your mayor should step in and do 1 and 2, then your mayor can't do that, because if they do that, then the police union can go on strike and you're not going to have any police, right? So I think one of the biggest things that we can do is when we go to our elected officials, we can go to our elected officials with a list full of the things we need to see done, and just ask them what policies are aligned with these different issues. Because once we learn the different policies and the ordinances that align with the issues, then we know exactly what to address. You can go and pull that policy. You can read through that policy and see what you see line by line. What are some of the issues? When you see policies, every line of the policy is numbered. When you go through the policy and you see something that you feel like is causing oppression, or is taking away a right, or is just really just that's questionable, all you gotta do is say, hey, on policy name this, on line 13 through line 15, we want to know why do we have to have this, right? And when you take away those, when you make amendments to those policies, what does that do, sir? That gives you guys the right and the opportunity to be able to work in the favor of the people. But if the policy is not amended, the work can't even be done. So a lot of times we get together, we protest, we rally, we do all of these things, but we don't even know exactly what we're standing, what is a barrier. We don't even know what's stopping us from being able to get the justice we need. So one of the big things that I think we can do when we partner with our elected officials, first and foremost, learn how to get a meeting that's on the books that actually happens. Second, know what we need to ask them. If their elected official isn't in a position to be able to make the change that you want to see made, because some might need to be county changes, some may need to be city changes, some may need to be state changes, and some may have to be made on a federal level. But the thing every elected official can do is they can point you to the policy. So I think that's one thing that we really have to understand on organizing the work. When we talk about organizing so that we can be strategic, we got to know what is the animal that we're fighting.
We do.
Because if we don't get qualified immunity out of the way, that limits what a district attorney can do in the first place. If we don't bring down some of the walls, and I'm just using this for, let's even talk about the school system. If we don't get it changed to where schools have to pull their budgets from their own tax districts, then we're never going to stop the inequities inside of the school. Because if you got $1 million houses in one area and you got 75% of people living in apartment complexes in the next area, they're never going to have the same balance in educational opportunities, because we have a system in place that says your tax money goes into a pocket that funds your schools. So until we change these policies that are in place and the way that the system is structured and organized, we can protest until we get tired. It's not going to change as much as we actually think it would. Is there anything that you want to add to that, sir?
No, I just think that and everything you said was right. That we at the end of the day, we also will need elected officials to have courage.
Yeah.
Courage to do the right thing, and in some instances, the activists, the community that we've been charged to represent has to be present enough to help elected officials walk in and be courageous and do the right things. And sometimes that means that they need to know that when you do what's right, you've got a body behind you that will support you when it comes election time. And if you don't do what's right, you also got a group of people that are going to reflect it at the polls when you don't do what's right. And sometimes that's also where we fail, where we don't show endurance. Is we make bold proclamations about what we want to do when election comes up, but then let it rain the day of election and ain't nobody going to the polls. I mean, just for stupid stuff.
Yeah.
And so we end up getting, a lot of times people blame elected officials, and I say, you know what, we get the elected officials that we deserve, because we are the ones who are charged to vote, in this democracy that we live in. So we are selecting the individuals that are
we put in place,
are responsible for, and so which means that we as a people got to do a better job of vetting and putting in individuals who believe in the principles that we believe in. But we need at some point, especially in jurisdictions where it's majority Black populace and majority Black elected officials, sometimes we're going to have to ask ourselves, why aren't you making different decisions? It is not a situation where we've got white elected officials making these policy changes. These sometimes it's people that look like us that refuse to do what's right.
Yeah. So
I'm glad you said that.
I want to say one thing before I forget.
Real.
It's something that you said that really is a hard one on me too. When I look at the people who we have to vote for president and vice president, right? And both of them have sent Black families to prison at the highest rates in American history, because we did not stand up for the people who could have been in that position. We didn't turn up, we didn't vote, we didn't go out and support, and we didn't become allies to the people who have been fighting on behalf of the Black community for decades. So now we have two people who both have sent a large percentage of very unfair or unequal percentage of minority people, Black and brown people, to prison. Like when you look at Black males are stopped almost 4 times more than white males for drug charges, but white males are found almost 20% at a higher rate to have drugs on them when searched. So white males on average are more likely to have a drug on them when they're searched, but you still over-police Black communities, and then you give a higher conviction sentence to Black males once they are found with the same drugs, right? We look at two people who helped put those policies in place, and those are the people who we had to vote for president and vice president. But we have no choice because we can't let Trump stay in office. So we got to support the people who we have instead of wishing we had different people. All right, y'all, we got 4 more minutes before closing. Is there anything that you guys would like to leave anybody with, or any suggestions you have for anybody who's trying to do this work in their community? Josh, one thing I do want to say, what you said about people showing up. Me and Jasmine, we just went on a trip up to let's see, what was that? Kentucky?
Louisville,
Kentucky, Louisville. And when we got there, we brought about 3 different shuttle buses full of activists. And when we marched, it was a protest for Breonna Taylor that was held across the street from their city hall. And when we marched, the only people who were there to march were the people who came on the bus.
Mm-hmm.
So can you imagine how discouraging that is?
Yeah,
but I just want to add that to say that's why it's so important that we do have the numbers, that we are organized, and that we are saying, how can we fight together? Like, we're not in your city, so when we leave, we're here to help raise your numbers. If we are the numbers. Now, when we got to the visual, it was already people there. But I'm just saying that when we come out to a city to support, and we see that the city's not supporting on the same level, that's going to be discouraging. But I apologize. I just want to bring that up but we do have 3 minutes before closing. So if you guys have anything you want to leave anybody with, if we can do 1 minute apiece.
I'll go. I want to leave people with go vote. We have to get political, people. We have to, if we want the changes. If you're tired, if you're getting discouraged because you've been out there marching and protesting and you don't see any changes, because now we have to get political. That's all I have to see. Go vote. Let's get political.
All right, Josh, what's on your mind?
I mean, for me, I just want people to stay positive and keep up the good fight. You know, I think that this is in line with a lot of things that go in life. And if it's really important to you, then you're going to continue to do everything in your powers to make sure that you follow through. You know, we wouldn't give up on our loved ones. We don't give up on the jobs that we have, whether we like them or we don't. We don't give up in other situations or other things that we feel are important. And this is something that definitely is. And I'm glad that Leon spoke on it, you know, from the standpoint of we kind of get what we deserve. And if we're not out there doing what we're supposed to do, don't complain about it. If we're not willing to stand up, protest in the rain or go vote in the rain or do the things that are necessary, then you basically getting out what you're putting in. So we can't be upset if we're not doing our part. And at the end of the day, we only in control of one person, and that's the person on the other end of that mirror. So everybody keep doing what you're supposed to do. Do your part, man, and keep mashing the gas, and let's get this thing. Let's get this change.
I love that. All right, Leon.
Yeah, our victory is not in our strength or our swiftness, but it's in our endurance. And so, you know, it's about enduring to the end. And I think that what we got to keep in our heart and our mind is that we're not doing what we do. We don't do for ourselves. What we're doing is so that the next generation has the opportunities maybe that we didn't have. And if we don't do it, then we owe the next generation an apology for not being the voice for them.
So I guess that leaves me. If I close out with one thing, I would just say, keep going, keep fighting, and just make sure that you're learning a little bit every day when you go out to fight. You know, it take one more person with you, ask somebody what they feel and what they think, stop and listen and see what other people are doing, and then let people know what you're doing so that way y'all can build off of each other. Because the more we learn and the more we do, the better we get. So, but I like what you said too, Josh. Just stay positive. The more that you believe you're gonna make a change, the more likely you are to make that change. If you don't believe that it's gonna change, you know, you gotta believe in it and you gotta claim it before you get it.
Absolutely.
All right, y'all. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for coming and sharing. And I'm so proud of each and every one of y'all and everything we're doing together.
Appreciate y'all. Thank you, King. Thank you, Queen. Appreciate y'all.
God bless y'all.
All right, y'all have a good evening.